Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strategic Labs, the channel where we deeply analyze the ideas, narratives, and strategies behind the documents. Today, we are going to dive into the material we have on the table. Before we start, please leave a like, share the episode, subscribe to the channel, and remember to check the description for the links to access the original material. Right, so today, we're deconstructing something truly fascinating, the Vatican's intelligence apparatus. And we're not talking about military spies here. We're looking at a completely hidden architecture that is built, literally entirely, on the art of diplomacy.
Now, when most of us think about global intelligence, our minds jump straight to the movies, right? Satellites, wiretaps, clandestine operatives creeping around in the shadows. But the documents we're looking at highlight a really foundational contrast here. Traditional secular state intelligence relies super heavily on militarized coercion, gadgets, surveillance, basically forcing their way into a target. Vatican intelligence, though, it operates on a completely different paradigm. It totally eschews armed conflict. Instead, it leans into subtlety, diplomacy, and, this is the real kicker, a continuous, deeply embedded global presence. I mean, the Holy See doesn't need to parachute operatives into a country because they're already there. They've been there for centuries. It's a system where information just quietly blooms in local communities and flows upwards, totally bypassing those aggressive tactics you'd see from a conventional nation-state.
So to really understand how this all works, we've got to look at the central operatives of this network. They're called Apostolic Nuncios, and they have this incredible dual mandate. On paper, officially, they are papal ambassadors, the Vatican's formal diplomatic envoys to sovereign nations. But critically, they also function as the Holy See's primary grassroots intelligence operatives. They are not just sitting around attending state dinners and signing treaties. No, these are highly trained, astute observers gathering nuanced sociopolitical data from a really unique vantage point. Because they represent both a sovereign entity and a global religion at the exact same time, they're operating right at the intersection of realpolitik and spiritual authority. And that gives them the ability to listen, discern, and interpret complex local realities in a way your standard secular diplomat just couldn't even dream with replicating. And to truly wrap your head around the power of this system, you've got to look at the sheer scale of it all. 180. That's the number of countries worldwide where the Vatican maintains an official diplomatic presence through these apostolic nunciatures. Think about that for a second. We are talking about a global footprint that rivals, and honestly, in a lot of cases, actually exceeds the diplomatic reach of massive superpowers like the United States or China. But here's the crazy part. The Holy See pulls this off without a single military base or economic sanction at its disposal. This staggeringly vast network means the Vatican has eyes and ears firmly planted in almost every single geopolitical hotspot, fragile state, and major capital on Earth. Let's look a bit closer at how this translates into physical infrastructure. What's absolutely fascinating in the source material is how these nunciatures are actually framed. These are definitely not your typical embassies. They are vital, pulsing nodes of information exchange. You know, a conventional embassy is mostly there to facilitate state-to-state relations. But a Vatican embassy, it serves a brilliant dual purpose. Yes, it connects the Holy See to the host government, but it simultaneously wires the Vatican directly into the local social fabric. The nuncio is out there cultivating relationships not just with the big-name politicians, but with opposition leaders, civil society actors, and everyday grassroots religious communities. It creates this incredibly rich, multi-layered intelligence ecosystem. They aren't just skimming the daily headlines. They're actually sensing the undercurrents of a society, way before those undercurrents ever bubble up into global news. So how exactly does all this on-the-ground information actually flow? Well, it relies on this masterful, decentralized, bottom-up pipeline. Step one starts at the very grassroots level, with the parish clergy. Think about your local priest. He's deeply integrated into his community, constantly hearing and observing the daily realities, the struggles, and the shifting moods of the people. Step two is what we'd call diocesan filtration. The local bishops gather all those scattered observations from the parishes, synthesize them, filter out the noise, and identify emerging regional trends. Then step three brings us up to the nunciate. Here, the Apostolic Nuncio takes that organic, grassroots data and combines it with high-level political intelligence they've gathered from state officials. And finally, step four, the Roman Curia. All that synthesized, incredibly context-rich intelligence arrives in Rome, where the Secretariat of State analyzes it to help shape the Pope's global strategy. It is, quite frankly, a spectacularly efficient, living network of human intelligence. But the real secret sauce to this network's effectiveness? It lies entirely in their ecclesiastical role. As the source material explicitly points out, this role grants them access to underground networks, minority communities, and even dissident groups. Now, put that into perspective.
Imagine a traditional spy trying to infiltrate a marginalized or dissident group in a hostile regime. It requires fake identities, massive personal risk, and, let's face it, a ton of inherent distrust. The Apostolic Nuncio, on the other hand, leverages the enduring moral trust of the Church itself. People who would absolutely never speak to a secular state agent will openly confide in a representative of the Church. Local clergy and activists are willing to relay highly sensitive intelligence to the nuncio because they implicitly trust the institution's confidentiality. Because of that moral framing, the Vatican gains access to realities that secular intelligence agencies are just completely blind to.
Which begs the question, what exactly are they listening for? They're gathering intel on things like shifting political alliances, subtle changes in societal moods, simmering religious tensions, the quiet emergence of dissidents, and the true, unvarnished loyalty of a regime's populace. But notice what isn't on that list. You're not going to find stolen military blueprints or hacked financial records here. The Vatican trades in pure, context-rich human intelligence, or HUMINT. They are essentially piecing together the entire psychological and social profile of a nation, and they're doing it without a single electronic intercept or mass surveillance program. It's an intelligence culture rooted entirely in observation, empathy, and deep human connection. Absolutely fascinating stuff. So you might be wondering, how do these nuncios protect themselves and their sources while handling such deeply sensitive information? Well, they rely on this brilliant strategic duality. On one hand, you have formal diplomatic immunity. As official ambassadors recognized under international law, they and their communications are legally shielded from any host government interference. You can't just tap their phones. But on the other hand, they possess this informal ecclesiastical solidarity. They wield the profound unspoken trust of a global religious network. It acts like an incredible double shield. They operate with the ironclad legal protection of a state diplomat while simultaneously tapping into the intimate confessional trust of a local pastor. It's a combination that makes their intelligence network incredibly resilient and, honestly, almost impossible for adversarial states to crack. And this perfectly highlights the core revelation of the text we're analyzing today. For the Holy See, diplomacy isn't some convenient cover for intelligence gathering. Diplomacy is the intelligence gathering. In the secular world, intelligence usually operates in the shadows to support diplomacy behind closed doors. But for the Vatican, the very act of maintaining a presence, of patiently cultivating relationships day in and day out, of engaging in interfaith dialogues, that is the mechanism itself. They aren't seeking to manipulate or coerce anyone. They seek to illuminate. By simply being present and acting as a moral interlocutor, they naturally absorb the complexities of a region. The information flows to them simply because of who they are. It really proves that massive influence and deep understanding can actually be achieved openly and transparently. So how is all this information actually deployed on the global stage? Well, during international crises, this network essentially transforms into an intelligence clearinghouse. Think about it. When formal state ties break down and countries actually go to war, what happens? Embassies slam shut and ambassadors get expelled. But the Apostolic Nuncios, it almost always stays open. Because of their unique neutral status and the fact that they clearly have zero military ambitions, Vatican diplomats are trusted to maintain communication channels between actively hostile parties. They act as these incredibly discreet intermediaries. They use the intelligence they've gathered not to wage war, but to facilitate peace, broker prisoner exchanges, and diffuse hostilities. They are actively shaping global events by turning their vast information network into a powerful instrument of mediation. Which really leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question. How exactly does a nation without a single army build what might be the world's ultimate global intelligence network? The answer we've uncovered in the text today is that in our modern age, soft power can profoundly, fundamentally outmaneuver hard power. By trading the sword for the diplomat's pen and swapping the spy satellite for the local parish, the Vatican has constructed an intelligence architecture that relies on patience, trust, and a really deep understanding of the human condition. It is an absolute masterclass in how influence, when it's wielded with moral authority and extensive presence, can shape the very course of global history right from the shadows. We've reached the end of this analysis. If this episode added value to your day, please leave a like, share it, and subscribe to Strategic Labs so we can keep deconstructing narratives. Remember to check the video description. See you in the next analysis.